Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that challenges you and develops your grit and resilience. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent. It is Thursday, October 10th, and welcome to episode number 89. What are the differences between AP and IB? In this week's news, 9 ways college is different for millennials than it was for previous generations. And we're in chapter 89 of 171 answers, and it's about the differences between advanced placement, AP courses, and their international baccalaureate, IB diploma. And this week's question wants to know what counselors are asked for when writing a student recommendation. And Mark will be in the fourth and final part of his interview with Tara of Smith College as they discuss what admissions officers do during the last 6 months of the year.
Okay, friends, we've got a few announcements. First is that the FAFSA is open, the free application for federal student aid. If you want or are eligible for free government money, such as Pell Grant, FSCOG, you're going to need to complete the FAFSA. Or if you're looking for the best federal loan you can possibly get, better than any private loan, then you're going to want to complete the FAFSA. And it opened up October 1st. I'll say a little bit more about that on a recommended resource of the week. Also, Anika had a request. She wants to know anytime somebody goes test optional. Remember that one?
I do. You got some more? How many more?
So this is slightly different, but it's still in that same venue. So subject tests, which was it last week we talked about subject tests, Anika, or was it a week?
I think so. I think it was last week.
So Cornell has decided to drop the requirement they've had that you need to take 2 SAT subject tests. So last year, Yale and Harvard and Dartmouth and all these schools and many, many others dropped that requirement, and some others moved from required to recommended. Take a guess right now, Anika, how many colleges flat out require the subject test?
What do we say? Oh, wait, the subject test.
Yep.
2?
4. Good guess. It's down to 4.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes.
I was just kidding. Oh, my
and I
God.
met with one of them today, by the way, for over an hour.
What?
I had a meeting with
goodness.
one of them today. The one I met with today, their mission officer, it was Harvey Mudd, which is in California. So they're one, and they're diehards. If you don't do the subject test, your app is incomplete. The others would be Caltech, MIT, and the University of Puerto Rico. So we're down to 4. Now that does not mean there are not some others that strongly recommend, right? So strongly recommend. You still got your Georgetowns, and Duke is still holding on, and there's some other IBs that still strongly recommend. But as far as flat out require, meaning your app will not be complete without it, we are down to 4.
So does the College Board cringe every time one of these announcements come out?
They kind of get scared. You're hitting them in the pocketbook.
Right?
Sorry, the other people that don't like it that much are the test prep industry. Because they survive off how important the scores are. But there's going to be a long time before the ACT and SAT are obsolete. I don't think it'll ever happen in my lifetime. And and you could make a case that that's a good thing or a bad thing. There's strong arguments either way. But that's not where we're going today. And the admissions tip that I want to share. And now this comes from another school I met with yesterday. I want to say the name, but I can't. If I said the name, everybody would know it. But I just kind of feel like they might not want me to say it. So I'm going to err on the conservative side. They told me, if you are in our academic profile, meaning your curriculum, your grades, and your scores are in the acceptable range, the single biggest thing that will determine if you are admitted is your answers to their 3 college-specific questions. So the admissions tip is to do a very, very good job on your college-specific questions. And for admissions vernacular, our word of the week is concentration. Any idea what that is, Anika? Besides focus.
Beyond focus. Okay, so wait, we're talking about terms that colleges use in their little glossary index.
Yeah, that's a good word for
I'm going to say concentration has to do with, I don't know. What is it, Mark?
It's just a synonym for major. There's some schools that don't use the word major. They say our concentration. But
wait, I was going to say that, but I thought that was too easy. Darn it. Okay.
Well, you need to just throw it on out there next time. Sometimes the obvious is right. Well, it's all good. Case. It is all good. And for you marathon runners who can hang with our marathon podcast, I'm going to do a college profile in another place where you can get great financial aid. Underrated gem. It is Winthrop University, not that far from you. Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina, 20 miles from Charlotte. So we'll be going there at the end.
All righty.
Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, this week's article is entitled 9 Ways College is Different for Millennials Than It Was for Previous Generations. And this is written by Hillary Hoffower. It's found in the Business Insider. And she leads off talking a lot about, how college tuition is much more expensive for millennials than it was for former folks back in the day. But she does list out these 9 reasons tuition, rates soaring being the first and foremost.
Can I interrupt you?
Mm-hmm.
Just overall, what did you think of this article?
I wasn't totally surprised by all of the different ones that she highlights.
Mm-hmm. I only asked that because I think this might be my favorite article we've ever discussed.
Really?
Yeah, I just thought that, first of all, I agreed with all 9 of her ways that she selected. And I just think it presents such a contrast to like what we experience going to school versus what the current generation is experiencing. I don't know. I just thought that I just loved it. Maybe it's because I think a lot of parents are still thinking it was the way it used to be and they're not kind of in the real world. And I just thought it sort of provided some enlightenment there. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut your mojo out there because you're on a roll.
No, well, no. In that vein, you want to go ahead and lead down the list of the 9 reasons?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so let's start with the first one, Mark. And it's what I know I've heard you say time and time before is that more students are going to college. Like the number of kids applying and attending college is like way above and beyond than say 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the stats are in the article. It says that undergraduate enrollment in the U.S. has doubled from 1970 to 2009. And according to the Department of Education, U.S. colleges expect a total of 20.4 million students in 2017, and that's 5.1 million more than at the turn of the century. So there we go. What do we got for number 2?
Well, no, but before we go to number 2, I wish he would have, this person would have cited the graduation rates. Like, I wonder how that compares to back then to now. Like, they're going more in droves, but what about the graduation rates? Has that changed? Do you think any?
They're fairly similar, but in recent years, you're seeing graduation rates really tick up. And recent years, it's not so much like comparing it now to 20 or 30 years ago. And that's because a lot of things, there's a lot more pressure being put on schools to deliver their ROI. Ever since the global recession in 2008, people are questioning, is it worth it? Is it worth all this money? So they're having to show their deliverables. And a lot of the federal and state funding and even like funding from like donors is being linked to graduation rates now. So,
yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So second reason they give is that it's more competitive. Like way more competitive than what it used to be. And what is it just because of the types of schools everybody's focusing on, or is it just like it's competitive across the board just because so many more kids are going to school?
So it's multiple things. And by the way, here's a stat to prove it. In 1988, so we're talking, that's not that long ago, Anika, right?
No, it's not.
1988, Columbia University had an acceptance rate of 65%. 2 out of every 3 people. So like when you're looking at somebody on the news and they're a little older and they went to Columbia, now you're like, man, they went to Columbia. Yeah, back then 2 out of 3 people got in. Okay. Now it's close to 5%. 5. Between 5 and 6, So how's that for a difference? 2/3 getting into 1 out of 20, just to prove the point. And Penn's stats are almost the same and many others. So there's multiple reasons for this. One is more kids are going to college than ever before, right? Much more. significantly. More international students are applying, so it's more of an international student body. That's tailored off the last couple of years due to the political upheaval we're having in this country, is sending a message that we're not international friendly. So that's a whole other thing, because that's impacting schools because they got used to that international money. But that's just a recent phenomenon, like the last year or two. If you go back over the last 20, 30 years, international applications are way up. And then the growth of the Common App is huge, and online apps in general, making it so much easier to apply. Like, students are applying to way more schools, right? So they're applying to way more schools. And then the more they hear that it gets harder to get in, they apply to more just to protect themselves. So we're caught in that vicious circle. Well, let me just read one quote on this, by the way.
Okay.
It's in the article. Jacob Arista of The Atlantic says that there is truth and untruth to the myth of college admissions getting harder each year. As it turns out, getting into college actually isn't any harder than it was a decade ago, she wrote. It's just the odds of admission to your particular college may have decreased. So what that means is that overall, Anika, it's still a 67% acceptance rate across the board. That's the national numbers. But people are fixating more. Also, the ascendancy of the rankings, also, Anika, is leading more and more people to focus on 10% of the 3,000 four-year schools. So there's 3,000 four-year schools out there, and 80 to 90% of them are not selective, but everyone's focusing on the 300 that are. Not everyone, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So next one is that, this one, of course, more expensive, way more expensive than what it was.
Way. Can we say way again?
Good gracious. Anything around, I know you got around those expenses.
I got a stat, right? Stat man over here. I'm stat man. I know.
Give it to him.
Oh, yeah. Of course, I'm stat man. For private college tuitions, witnessed an increase in cost of 129% when adjusted for inflation. So in the late 80s, it cost $7,050 or $15,160 in today's dollars for a private undergraduate degree. Today, $34,740. And then, of course, the more elite schools are, can be double that. So, yep, no doubt about it.
Okay. Well, and then the next reason is pretty much in line with that. And it's talking about the cost of books, which I know even for Janaea in high school is ridiculous. Like, $300 for a book is just not right. But I know that's going on, like way even before college. So, oh my goodness, let me throw this one out before you throw it out, Mark. Okay. The one about that books alone are like 812% more.
Yeah, in the last 30 years.
More costly.
812% more costly in the last 30 years. And now one thing I will say about books, there's also become a lot more flexibility too, because you've got book rentals now and you've got online books. And of course, there's always been pre-owned. So, depending on, my kids have been blessed. Like, I've been able to get books for them have cost under $900 a year.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Electronic textbooks they say are saving $1.42 billion a year.
Whoa.
So while books are on the rise, there's also a lot more flexibility in ways you can get the books.
Okay. All right. And so, look at that segue into the next reason about the differences is that we're much more technologically advanced.
I'm going to make you say that 5 times. It's like, well, I don't know what would be more of a challenge, saying that technologically or saying tuition 5 times.
But wait, no, you need to get me to say it one time because I know I didn't say it right, and I'm not doing it again.
All right, you said that with authority, so no pushback from me.
Technology. How about that? Much more technology. But how about this when they were talking about how, and I remember this, but I didn't remember this, how these kids are now doing these lectures, getting lectures, what they say in PowerPoint, and they're offering like recorded lectures from faculty. It's just, I get it, but I don't like it. And yeah.
You're old school.
Very old school.
But you got to remember, they're used to being on the screen. And so, you have Coursera, huge online courses that you can take now, free MOOCs. We talked about that before, that are available. This is probably one of the biggest benefits in a lot of ways, how technology, the creativity. Now, obviously, there's a danger, right? If it goes to extreme and you lose the human component. But I'll give you an example of how technology has been amazing. So do you remember, Nika, like maybe, 60 episodes ago or something, it was a long time ago, we talked about summer melt? Because I remember you were freaking out when you found out as many as 35% at some schools.
Yes.
Admitted kids don't show up in the fall. Remember that?
Very disturbing, yes.
So Georgia State is being hailed right now and being celebrated for their incredible reduction in their summer melt and the programs they've implemented. And arguably the biggest thing that they've done quite a few things, but arguably the biggest thing they've done is to create a situation where they have a series of text messages. They go out to all the students, like reminding them, you know what I mean? Reminder, go in the portal, sign up for orientation. Reminder, deposit is due. Reminder, send your proof of health insurance. I'm not going to list all the things that people have to do that drop off, but you get the point. So through text message and technology, they're doing some good things. So this is a mixed bag, right? This one's good and bad.
Yeah, very mixed. And she did break out, actually, as the next reason, she did break out online classes as being, us having more online classes, which is still in line with the technology, but she did break that one out separately.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was in college pre-internet. There was no internet when I was in college.
Right.
I think the internet came around mid-90s, early mid-90s. Mm-hmm. I was already out of college by then. Didn't even know of any internet. This is a game changer. Online course. Look at this. Online course enrollment. I should ask you can I ask you what year you graduated, or is that hitting too close to home?
No. You college, 99?
Yes.
Came out 99, yeah.
Okay, so you probably had a little internet, but not to go to the online course.
Minimal. Very minimal, yeah.
Yeah, I'm an 80s college guy. So online course enrollment increased between fall of 2015 and 2016 school years more than it had in the past 3 years, according to Babson survey research. Public colleges saw a 7% increase. Business Insider previously reported on a survey that revealed 69% of millennials thought that they learned better from technology than from people. I don't know about that, but anyway, exactly. I'm not a millennial, so maybe I can't stand a judgment.
We just cannot relate.
You just stay in my lane. Stay in my lane.
Stay in our unmillennial lane. All right.
Yes, exactly.
All right. The next one. Now, this one was interesting. It says that the population is more diverse than what it was. I suppose, but what I immediately thought of was like these campuses that are so not diverse. So that threw me for a second, but I guess I kind of get it. If we're comparing.
No, it's very, very evident. There's so many colleges that are minority now, and of course that's, Black, biracial, multiracial, Asian, Latinx, throw in the international population. Here's the article says, according to 2018 State of Student Research conducted by Chegg, which is a very reputable company, sampled 1,000 college students. Current minority enrollment is 42%. Okay. And in 1970, it was 15%. So you've gone from 15 to 42%. And then women make up more than half of the student population. So that's another way. In 1970, they made up less than half. And then students are also older. All that is different aspects of diversity, right? Gender, right. Race, ethnicity, and age. 40% of college students are older than 25 compared to 28% in the past. So they're older, more women, and more people of color.
Okay, I'll take that. Mm-hmm. All right. The next one is, I think we're on number 8. Students are not as religious today as we were back in the day.
Does that one surprise you or not?
Yes. Probably because I was not religious.
Oh, okay. So you already were. You went the opposite.
So yes.
You were not religious then, and now you're more religious,
exactly.
Right?
So I was like, okay, I guess so.
No, but it's known. Like if you look at all the population, so many more students either say they're atheist or agnostic than ever before. Church attendance is way down for the millennials. In the same way where technology is up for millennials, church and religion is definitely down. And here's a stat on this. The number of freshmen who don't identify with any religion at all has gone from 16% to 25% from 2005 to 2014. And that's based on some research from the UCLA's Cooperative Institutional Research Program. They surveyed 150,000. That's a lot. That's what we call a big survey.
Right.
150,000 full-time freshmen at 200 different colleges and universities. So that's a pretty big decrease if you look at it, Anika. 16 to 25%. That's like a 50% change.
Yeah, I cannot deny. I'll take that.
Oh, I bet the next one you'll agree with.
What? The final reason? I mean, the final...
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah. More stressed out. Like, that should have been the first, the second, third, and then the ninth.
Students or parents? Students or parents?
Both. Yeah. I mean, oh my goodness. What we talk about, the mental health issues on campuses and where they're trying to address it. I totally see that one. And we've talked about it before.
And a quote here in the article, according to a study by the Center of Education and Workforce at Georgetown, 70 to 80% of students have a job while attending school. 40% of them work more than 30 hours a week, exceeding the 15 hours a week that is recommended you don't exceed without hurting your academics. And then another quote here, another survey done between 2005 and 2015 about the proportion of freshmen who say they feel overwhelmed. That is up 10%, 10%. And then look at the demand at every single college that I visit to, Anika. And this is true for the elites and the non-elites. Like, their counseling centers are just overwhelmed. If anybody wants a job out there, become a mental health counselor at a college campus, and you will not be lacking employment.
That's right. And actually, I would love for this to be our takeaway from this article, Mark, is that mental health reason why they say it's so much more different for our kids than it was for us, and how we need to pay attention to our kids. Even though they're a little bit more grown, we still need to make sure that they're seeking out those services. So that's going to be my big takeaway for everybody.
And my big takeaway is that parents need to understand that this is not 1990 anymore, And when it comes to college, like, it is just so radically different in all of these ways and others. And just be aware that what your children are going into. I mean, we could have listed more, like, dorms are like palatial these days. Almost everybody gives you a choice between apartment style and suite style. And you know what I mean? When I went to college, nobody knew anything other than traditional style, long corridor, community bathrooms that didn't even enter into my mind or anybody else's mind. There wouldn't even be another model other than that, other than frat houses.
Right.
So, but anyway, these are the 9. And I thought awesome was art. Awesome. I thought the article was... Now I'm getting tongue twisted.
Yeah, I was about to say, say that 10 times, Mark.
Why are you going to say, how come you go to 10? I said 5 to you. Why you got to double it? I'm just going to stop. Like, you not even attempt it. But so it's a good article. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Okay, friends, we are up to our 89th episode in our series. And for our first-time listeners, our article numbers correspond with the chapters in a book I wrote called 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions. But our title of our episode is not necessarily the main part of our episode. It's just 1/4. So here we go. The 89th chapter in my book, hence our title and topic for this segment, is: what is the difference between advanced placement, more commonly known as AP, and international baccalaureate, more commonly referred to as IB? What are the differences? Anika, you read the article. What do you think?
First, I want to say that I wish I read this chapter before I sat in my first IB info session several years ago, because, man, I came out of there like, what in the world did he just say?
Oh,
like,
so this broke it down for you.
It did. And I kind of sort of got it later. Naya didn't take that route, or Jalen didn't take that route, so I didn't get into it. But, man, I just don't speak no IB. That's how I felt when I came out of there. I just didn't get it. So I totally get the AP, and both my kids have taken AP classes. And the way you described it is, the AP being more of an a la carte format where kids can choose a subject where they want to master.
Mm-hmm.
But I do appreciate how you shared how they're first, they're the same for these two reasons, mostly because they're advanced courses and they both have end of year tests, which I didn't necessarily know that about the IB program. And the IB, I just can't believe that I just couldn't walk away from these very succinct, okay, it's writing intensive. Okay, you have to take this theory of knowledge course requirement. Okay, you have to write a 4,000 word essay. You have to participate in a 150-hour service project. Yep. You have to engage in a creative activity. I just can't. And I want to go back in time, and I want to sit in that session and wonder why it was just so not understandable.
Maybe you were sleeping that time. Maybe it was one of those nights where you...
Probably. Maybe. I was thinking that. I was thinking that, but I remember this was like when they had first started school. I want to say I did something with Jalen, but the one I remember, I was all alert, I think, and happy and excited because, she was going off to her new campus and doing her thing. So I don't know. But either way, now I get it. And I'm totally there thanks to Chapter 89.
So there are quite a few core differences. Like the AP is an American-based program. It was founded with American students in mind back in 1955. And it was designed to be, like you said, like an a la carte program. Pick and choose the different areas in your strength. And AP courses are designed to be college courses, freshman level college courses. IB, founded in 1968 in Switzerland, had the entire world in mind. Total international focus, total focus on international mindedness. So that's a big difference, between the two. Another major difference is that the IB was intended to be part of a diploma. And so it's a worldwide curriculum, and it's the expectation that you complete the diploma. So you have your rigor. And by the way, IP also has levels. You have your higher level and your standard level, where there's like one level for AP. But the idea is that you have this in-depth, world-based knowledge that has a tremendous focus on critical thinking skills and writing intensity. And then, as you said, service as well. And you have to take certain courses, right? Like TOK, it's famously known as TOK, Theory of Knowledge. It's a classic. It just completely teaches you. Do you know what TOK is about, Anika? Like what you learn in TOK, Theory of Knowledge?
I thought it had something to do with like critical thinking skills, but...
So it's phenomenal at developing critical thinking skills. Phenomenal. But it's a philosophy course, and it basically deals with how do we know what we know? How do you know that the sky is blue? How do you know? It's like that's deep, right? You don't think about how do you know that you know. And so It's like one of those classes that changes how people live. And then, of course, you also have what's called CAS. It's an acronym for Creativity, Action, and Service. That's that 150-word project. But, oftentimes I'm asked, what's better, AP or IB? I get asked that a lot. And the way a college is going to look at it is they are not going to hold it against a student for taking one or the other, just like most schools won't hold it against a school that drops AP or IB and develops their own advanced classes. They'll judge you through the context of what your school offers. So both of them are rigorous, and colleges understand that, and colleges respect that. And I want to say something, and I'm hesitant to say this because our families are so dedicated and they want so much. They'll do the best of the best of the best for their kids. I was talking to one of our listeners as well as the family I'm working with, and they said, and this is a very successful mom entrepreneur, and she's like, Mark, if I had to switch toilets for my kid to go work to the school I want him to go to, I would do that. I was like, man, you're dedicated. So our families will do anything and everything for their kids. And so it's with a little hesitance, and trepidation is too strong of a word. I'm saying what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it because we pride ourselves on being the podcast that pulls the curtain back and says it like it is. And I'm going to say it. Colleges love the IB. They love it. And if I had a choice as a parent between IB and AP, I'm taking IB. No question about it. So they're not going to hold it against you if you take AP. That'd be crazy for them to do that. The AP is the bigger program by far. 2 million kids took AP exams in the U.S., Anika, and about 1/15 of that, 1/15 take IB exams. So the IB is by far the smaller program. IB also costs more. You're looking at about $94 to take an exam for AP, and you're looking at like $172 registration fee plus a $119 fee per exam for the IB. So one is more expensive, but the IB, the rigor, one of the schools I work, I'm going to give them a shout out. And actually I'm speaking there tomorrow night on scholarships, Riverwood International Charter School in Sandy Springs, Georgia. So they offer AP and IB like quite a few schools do. And some of my best conversations have been talking with students that have taken both AP and both IB courses and asking them how they found them to be different. And every time I talk to the students, how are AP and IB different? They'll tell you they're not even close. as far as which one is more rigorous, which one develops the critical thinking. But don't get me wrong, because most people take AP. Colleges respect AP highly. A lot more breadth and less depth with AP. You cover a lot of content. It's very, very content-based. And IB is a lot more tricky because with IB, first of all, you have standard level courses and higher level courses. And then the other thing with IB is they have a middle years program for middle school and then elementary. So it's really an entire world-based curriculum. And the bottom line is they're both highly respected by colleges because of the rigor. And it's a good way for them to, one, evaluate how well you're able to handle college level work, but more importantly, prepare you so that when you get in college, you're not like run over with a Mack truck by the level of rigor. Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com.
So let me ask you this, Mark. So
Sure.
Okay, so we talked about how a couple of weeks ago, where the kid didn't score so well on the AP and they didn't submit their scores.
Correct.
Is that still in line with the IB? Like, do they still respect you for taking those courses, but if you don't do well on the test, don't submit your scores?
Yeah, so the thing with IB is because it's even more expensive. I mean, remember, one of the reasons why schools don't judge is maybe it was a cost issue. Maybe Aunt Bertha died. You're at the funeral. IBs can be even more cost prohibitive in certain instances. Now, I'll say this. If you're going to get the IB diploma, it's going to be an expectation as part of the whole IB diploma that you take those exams. And there are schools, both for AP and for IB, there are schools that have as their policy, you have to take the exam. Both my kids went to a private day school in Atlanta, and the policy there was you had to take an exam. You had to take the exam if you attended their school. So each school can develop their own policy, but that's a long, convoluted way of saying yes.
But even if you take the exam, though, and you don't score well, like your high school's telling you you have to take the test. Okay, you take the test, but you don't do well on the test. So what do you do at that point when you don't do well on the IB test?
Even schools like Georgetown, which is such a stickler, send us everything. Even schools that don't practice score choice, they don't apply that to AP or IB.
Okay.
That's a SAT, ACT thing. So the bottom line is, you don't have to submit your scores.
And I guess the follow-up question to that is it still the same? Because we're talking about how 3 is like considered the passing for AP. But in some, depending on what selective school you apply to, don't send your 3 because that's not good enough for them. Is there that still kind of range with it? What is the scoring system for IB? Is it like the 1 through 5?
For IB tests, the scores range from 1 to 7 versus 1 to 5 for AP. But for IB, you have actually 2 different levels of courses. You have standard level courses and you have higher level courses. Now, for your more selective schools, usually only the higher level courses are going to count for college credit. But the scores that you will actually need will vary by academic subject. So you have to check the policy because it could be a 4 or a 5 or a 6 or a 7. I'll tell you what, let's link an IB credit policy to our show notes. And I just want to clarify, just a 3 for a lot of the majority of schools in this country, a 3 is a good score. It's just the highly selectives that want 4s and 5s. And one way you can know is every school lists on their website their AP policy for credit and their IB policy for credit. You can just look it up. You just put the name of the school and put AP policy or IB policy. And I shouldn't say every, because every time you say every, you get in trouble. You should say the overwhelming majority. Let's say that, right? The overwhelming majority of schools have this on their website. And you can look on, and if it's a school like UNC Chapel Hill, very, very reputable school, they've come out and they're respecting 3s. So you just that's such a school by school thing, Anika, whether or not a 3 is seen as a decent score. But at the most selective of the selectives, they want 4s and 5s, and they want 6s and 7s.
Okay.
And I'll tell you another thing. So even that the IB was founded as a full diploma program where you need to take a set of courses that sync and integrate so that you have a breadth of knowledge, similar like to a core. You know how some colleges have a core and you have to take a core curriculum?
Right.
Most IB schools will allow you to take them a la carte like the AP. It just wasn't intended to do that.
Okay.
So most schools will allow you to take an IB course and an AP course if they offer it, or just a couple IB courses. But I will tell you, this is another thing. The most selective schools, they want the diploma. You know, I did all these visits. I'm not going to say which one. I'll just say it was one of the schools I visited over the summer. So that means it could have been Harvard, could have been Stanford, could have been Smith, could have been Coast Guard Academy, or it could have been Penn. But one of the counselors, they had a question. They put up their hand. They said, I'm working with this unbelievable student. Like, this student is amazing, but they're in the IB diploma program and it's killing them. Like, they're hardly sleeping. They're stressed out and they're just an amazing student. And so she said, so my advice is like, drop out of the diploma and just take IB courses. And then she said, how would you look at that? Like, this kid's got a great GPA, great test scores, great recommendations. And then one of those schools, whose name I won't mention, said, we love the IB diploma. And if you can't handle the IB diploma, then we're probably not the right school for you. I know. They just like sucker punched her in the gut. Yeah. She was so sad because she clearly loved that kid.
Clearly.
So she said, so basically what you're telling me is I gave the kid bad advice. And then the admission officer said, well, I'm not saying that because there's lots of great schools out there. I'm just saying for us, we look at your ability to handle the full diploma and do it as an indication of whether or not you can handle our rigor.
Reality slap again. We got a few of those these past few weeks.
We really have.
Goodness gracious. But hey, I'm glad you told us up front. Thank you, school.
So is there anything I said about this APIB in this conversation that was new for you, Anika?
I mean, yeah. I mean, because I didn't know about the scoring system mostly for IB.
Okay.
I didn't know that. And also the fact that schools really favor it. And I get it. I mean, it's clearly more rigorous. So
let me just restate that because it's really important. I don't want to say not that many schools offer IB. Right. Like, it's a short list across the country.
You mean of high schools that offer IB? Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't hold it against the student for not taking it because you can only take what you have. I mean, they would really be empty if they required that. Let me just say this. This is what most schools do. They will reach out to this. Oh, this is going to be a good segue to what we're talking about next. In our next section, the question from Shannon. They rely on the school counselor when they're completing their secondary school report to let them know what the most rigorous curriculum is at your school. And if the counselor comes back and says, you know what, the most rigorous curriculum at our school is not IB or AP, it's like Dr. Frankenstein's physics and chem advanced classes, and they're just called advanced classes, but they're not IP. I can't get that right. I keep combining them. I want to say IP and AB.
AB.
Gee. Anyway, if it's Dr. Frankenstein's like physics and chem class and we just call them advanced, then that is duly noted. So it's the most rigorous course at your school, the most selective schools want to know that the students are taking the most rigorous curriculum. It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark. Going on to Miss Shannon from California. Shannon, I'm going to read.
Okay. Oh, Nika, I'm like interrupting you all left, right, and center today.
That's okay.
So something's been bothering me ever since last week. Do you remember last week we had a question and it was like high school mom? Remember it said high school mom? And by the way, I figured out why it was only high school mom. So that question came in on our survey, and our surveys are anonymous, right? So we don't know people's names.
Right.
So on the survey, it said, can you answer that? But I listened to my answer and I thought it sucked. So I basically said, because that question last week basically said, what if you're not that top kid and you want to get into the top school? Like, how can you do it? And I pretty much said,
you can't.
You know, well, I didn't quite go that far. I said, you better have a serious hook that school values in a tremendous way. Otherwise, they have so many kids that have all that stuff that you probably should lower your expectations and realize there's so many great schools out there. And that, I don't dismiss anything I said before, but I could have said some other things. So just briefly, let me just say this. 3 other things that you can do if you're in that situation. Have incredibly powerful recommendations that speak about you in a really effusive way and show what you'll add and bring out your character. So make sure your recommendation writers are amazing. Write an incredibly powerful essay that is a kind of essay that creates this bond between you and the reader, the admission counselor. It needs to be authentic to who you are, but people buy an emotion and they justify it with logic. When the admission counselor like falls in love with the kid through the essay and feels like, oh my goodness, I have to have this kid on this campus, that sometimes can change their perspective from, instead of how does this kid compare to other kids, it can be, and it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. It can be, oh my goodness, we've had other kids that have been successful here with this academic profile. I know they're not going to, so that's a different bar, right? Instead of how do you compare to others, it's, we've had kids like here that have been successful. I'm going in and fighting for this kid. And every year schools take a few kids that are way outside of their profile. So I would say unbelievable recs, incredibly powerful essay, the kind that just creates an emotional connection. I call it increasing your likability in the eyes of the admission officer while maintaining your authenticity. And then the last thing I say is have some very unique extracurriculars, the kind that make you stand out. So I'm just making this up, Anika. Let's say you had a student and they started juggling, juggling balls. And next, they're like juggling balls for the Atlanta Hawks and performing at halftime. And then they're traveling around and they're, competing. That's the kind of thing that school said, you know what? This kid is just so interesting. We're not going to have another kid in our applicant pool that is doing something like this. So those are I just wanted to add a little addendum to last week because I didn't like my answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally fine.
Okay. Now let's get back to Shannon.
And we get back to Shannon now.
Yes, we can.
Shannon.
But hopefully high school mom is a little happier now after that answer.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to read Shannon's question. She said, you touched on one subject, and I want to know more details on what exactly counselors are asked to answer about a student for a recommendation. They have the power to be a huge advocate or mediocre advocate for a student. My daughter's high school counselor has 400 other students. I tried to Google such a list and did not find any info on this. So this would be a handy reference for students, not to be fake, but just to be conscious of behavior and know what info to talk with their counselors about when they have FaceTime. So I think what Shannon is asking, Mark, is basically how do you groom your student's relationship with your counselor? That's the way I read that.
Yeah, and I think another way I also read it is what are the things that the counselor is looking for to kind of make you stand out to get a real positive letter, right? That's just kind of like a coin. There's like two sides of a coin. It's kind of like we're kind of saying the same thing in different ways.
Right.
I do have to say this, Anika. So do you remember when I first explained this to you and counselor calls and all that stuff? Remember how you were feeling a certain kind of way?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was speaking with somebody, one of our listeners early this week, and she was saying, when you said that, I almost drove off the side of the car and slammed my car into the ditch. I ran just like Anika. I had to share that. Like, I don't want to be causing accidents out there.
Don't be killing us, Mark. You killing us.
I'm trying to do the John McCain Straight Talk Express, but I don't want to be still straight talking people into the ditches. Jeez. All right, let's get back to Shannon. So, first of all, you have the basic stuff, right? There's an official secondary school report. It's an official part. It's the counselor portion of the common application. This is for the Common App. The Common App's over 900 now, Anika. It grew over 80 schools last year. Jeez, It's going to hit 1,000 soon. That's great. Anyway, so there's the basic things like what is your class rank? That's on there. Dates the rank covers. That's on there. Cumulative GPA, GPA scale, dates GPA covers. Is the GPA weighted or not weighted? What's a passing grade? What's the highest GPA in your class? Is the student an IB diploma candidate? Those are all questions. The questions, Anika, that really get to the character piece are this. And there's actually about 5 of them. Number 1, how long have you known the student and in what context? That's so wide open. And that's no box checking. That's a short answer question. How long have you known them and what context? So this is like, if you don't know your counselor, there's not a lot they can say. And how they know you and what context they know you, there's a lot of opportunity there for you to shine by getting to know them. And it could be, I have great conversations with them about their future and they're interested in biomedical engineering and they come and they talk to me about career opportunities involved in, there's so many, it's wide open, but it's an opportunity for you by getting to know your counselor for them to say positive things versus say nothing.
Okay.
Here's another one. What are the first words that come to mind as you describe the student? Short answer question. Total opportunity for you to have superlative, exemplary, words that accentuate your strengths. But you got to know them. Okay? And that's a open-ended comment box kind of thing. And then here's another one. I recommend the student, we talked about this one before, no basis with reservation, fairly, strongly, enthusiastically. And so this is what I want to say about this, and then you can tell me what comments you have. Admissions, in some ways, is like financial investing. When you're looking to invest, you want to know, okay, what's the probability of me getting a good return on my investment? And what's the probability of me losing my money? And that's how admissions is. It's all about risk and reward. Like, what is the upside of this applicant? But what is the risk I'm taking on if I take this applicant? And recommenders are social proof. They're social proof, they're character illumination. They can also speak to your extracurricular contributions and give an assessment of that. And school counselors in particular are very valuable because we remember how we talked about our readers read in school groups, Anika? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so they read in school groups. And so they're, one college is reading a group of students all from the same school, typically. And then they can tell by how the counselor describes the student. Do they know the student? How enthusiastic are they about the student? All of that will come out, and it really becomes apparent when you're reading the same recommendation. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of your big public schools, they'll have like different people doing this, right? Like they'll divide the alphabet up into A through D and E through H and blah, blah, blah. And so it's not always the exact same counselor always writing the same thing. But oftentimes, certainly at smaller schools, you're getting that comparison. And who is better positioned to give an assessment on the extracurricular impact than that school counselor? The teacher can really talk about you in the classroom, but in terms of your contributions to the whole school community and how you fit in the whole school community and what you're doing to make that school better, both extracurriculars and character traits, the school counselor is really, especially at smaller schools, is really an opportunity. And in big schools, it's a great opportunity too, because if most of the school counselors are not really given much information because their caseload is so big, and so it's super generic, and then all of a sudden they start talking a lot about somebody, then you shine because, notice I didn't say you shade.
Yes.
I'm learning.
We all noticed that, Mark. Thank you. Getting it right, darn it.
Yeah, thank you. I better get it right. I think all the listeners will just tune me out. Like, there's only so much you can be out of touch with reality. But anyway, it's just an opportunity. So, because a lot of times I work with someone like, I'm at a big school, my counseling load's so big, like I don't really think there's an opportunity. No, I'm like, look, that's a great opportunity because their expectations will be lower for you. And if you get in and you get to know them and they get to see how you're contributing both through your extracurriculars and through your intellectual inquisitiveness and through your character. And then it's very easy to tell when you're reading a recommendation if the counselor is enthusiastic versus if they're tepid about a student. It's very easy. and it jumps off the page. So do you think I answered the question, Anika, or not?
Oh, you definitely answered the question, but that still leaves the wonder about those 30 kids out of that 400 who are very quiet, just kind of reserved. Parents don't listen to your college-bound kid. They're excellent students, and they can contribute. They would be tremendous assets to wherever they go. How does that counselor deal with those outside of just writing, oh, I don't know much, so I'm just going to choose not to answer this question, or I'm going to not say much?
Are you talking about the more introverted, diffident kid who still comes to get to know the counselor, but they're just more reserved? Or are you talking about the kid who doesn't really ever talk to the counselor at all? Because those are...
I'm talking about the excellent student who doesn't talk to the counselor at all because they just don't know to talk to the counselor. So how does that counselor deal with those kids? Just because I'm not coming to talk to you?
Yeah, I remember reading those kind of recommendations, and part of me would say this is a big public school, so we have to remember not to hold it against the kid. But remember, it's about risk and reward. And so if you're not giving me an opportunity to increase my trust in you, then you're not advancing your case. You're not advancing your case. Like, I'm not trying to say that automatically means you're denied, because one, what's the selectivity of the school? Two, how do they make admissions decisions? How much focus is it on? Remember something. Colleges are first and foremost academic institutions. And so the curriculum that you're taking, the grades that you have, the test scores that you have are still going to be the main factors for most schools in their decisions. But what happens when you get into the really competitive schools, everybody has those things. So then these become the things that differentiate the rest of... I mean, when I talk to the highly selective schools, and they tell me between 85 to 95% of their applicants would be perfectly fine at their school and they could do the program. So they're not picking between someone who can do the work and not do the work. They're not picking between someone who's a good citizen and a bad citizen. They're picking between, like, people who almost everybody, 9 out of 10, would be a great kid here. And so that's where you're going to need these other things to differentiate yourself. So it doesn't help you if the counselor doesn't know you.
Period.
Now, if you're talking about the kid that does get to know the counselor, but they're just more reserved, personality-wise, that can cut two ways. A lot of schools are more conscious than ever about the fact that, in general, admission officers are extroverts, because you have to be really perky to be at fairs and talk to people you don't know. Don't get me wrong. I meet a lot of introverts, too, in admissions, but they're more extroverts than introverts, right? I remember we always used to say when we were hiring somebody, perky, 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 or even for our tour guides, we wanted perky because it just makes people feel comfortable. But colleges are increasingly aware of that bias, and they've been doing like bias sensitivity training.
Okay.
A lot of them have gone through professional development with that book called Quiet, and had the speaker come in and done workshops around that book called Quiet. There was a second follow-up so that they could learn to value the reflective introvert that is a deep thinker and adds in a different kind of way.
Love it. That's what I needed you to end on. Thank you for that.
Good. Okay, friends, it's our final session with my former student. And in this session, Tara takes us through the last 6 months of what admission officers or admissions counselors, my preferred term, do month by month, so you can understand what the job entails. Listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, Tara, so you've talked about August being planning, and we've talked about travel season in the fall, and we've talked about reading season, and now decisions go out. So I'm sure you've got acceptances, you've got denials, you've got wait lists, and maybe the occasional hold that you may need some more information on. So let's talk about that process. So when do you guys send decisions out, and sort of walk us through what happens after decisions go out over the next, whether you want to do 1 month, 2 months, however you want to do it?
Sure. So our regular decisions will be released on March 20th of 2020. It's usually towards the kind of middle end of March where we send out our decisions, like most colleges. And that is really our waiting game. The entire kind of college application process, I know students are fairly anxious about, whether or not they'll get in and whether or not, we see the students in their best light. And this is their chance to kind of put us in that hot seat and really get to explore their options once they figure out where they're going. So we're waiting for them to respond to us. We're also planning our admitted students program, which usually happens in April. And so for that program, we have an entire weekend planned. We have what's called Open Campus and Discovery Weekend. So Open Campus is for is a part of our admitted students program, and then our Discovery Weekend is for our admitted students of color. And so they have a little bit of an extended program to give them a little more in-depth information about what they can expect and why they should choose Smith as their college. And there's a lot that goes into that program planning. We have, of course, tours, meetings, and lunch with faculty. We also have overnight hosting, which I am in charge of, which is a very, very large process for me. But again, it's one of those things where it's hectic and it's kind of crazy, but I definitely love it. It's just a big puzzle that I have to put together with all the moving pieces.
Yeah, I don't know if you call it this, but we used to call this yield season. So it's like, you got planning season and travel season and then reading season and now yield. This is like this is time to reel in all your top recruits that you've worked really hard all year, and you've gotten attached to amazing kids who you've met on the road, or you've read their files and you've fallen in love. And now you're trying to, do you guys, some schools go out and do events in areas. Let's say you have a lot of applicants in New York City and they do an event where they come to you. Do you guys do everything on campus, or you do any sort of go to you events as part of what I call yield season? I don't know if you guys call it that at Smith or not.
Sure. I think yield season is probably the best name for it. We don't, to my knowledge, we don't do any events in other locations. We do everything on campus. But for that Discovery Weekend portion of it, where we have our students of color have that extended weekend for our admitted students program, we do actually take care of the travel of our admitted students of color. And so, we try to make sure that we can get them to our campus so that they can visit, especially if they haven't had a chance to visit in the fall. We think it's really important for them to have that experience, to be able to stay in one of our amazing houses, spend time with our current students, and just get a chance to see what life might be like actually living on our campus.
Now, do you do this for students of color because a lot of them are under-resourced and they may not have the finance, not all, but some may not have the resources to travel? Or do you do it because it's really competitive for those top kids? If everybody else is doing some of this and you're not, then you may not be as diverse as you want to be.
I think it's a little bit of both. We definitely want to make sure that we are getting all the students that we want, which is obviously all the ones we've admitted. But we definitely want to make sure that students who haven't had the chance to visit our campus get that opportunity. I think it's really crucial as a student making that decision of where you're going to live and study for the next 4 years, that you have the chance to visit and to stay on that campus, even if it's for a few hours, but especially if you get to do an overnight. It's definitely a valuable experience for students to be able to put themselves on the actual college campus, walking, from dorms to classrooms. It's a great experience for them, and it helps to make an informed decision about whether or not we're the right space for them.
Do you do any individual follow-up with anybody from your territories? Because obviously you know who's admitted from your territory and who you met on the road. Is there any communication from you toward them, or is it more reactive where, if they reach out to you with a question, you're just trying to be responsive?
So typically what we'll do is we actually have our students reach out to folks that have been admitted, hope they're, encouraging them to come to our Discovery Weekend, but also encouraging them to come to Smith, right, and make their choice. So it's our students that volunteer their time actually to send out emails and reach out to admitted students to try and drum up some more interest about choosing Smith as their college.
I think that's really smart. As someone, I was director of recruitment at Westtown, and students, they want to hear from students, they love them. So that's a really smart strategy on your part. And even the parents, do your students that talk to parents if they want to talk to a student as well, or is it limited only to talking to students?
Yes, our students are more than happy to make themselves available. In fact, this past year at Open Campus and Discovery Weekend, we did something a little bit different, which I'm very, very proud of. My interns and kind of my team were the spearheaders of it, but we created a postcard and we actually made sure that we had students available that spoke other languages other than English. So we had a few Spanish-speaking students, Portuguese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Arabic. And so we had some students around so that if English isn't their first language, especially for the parents, they can still have conversations with students and get their questions answered without having to worry about trying to speak in English.
That's great. Now, did you find yourself having conversations with students or parents, or listen, I'm really interested in Smith, but this other school gave me a better financial aid? Like, do you find some of those kinds of conversations come up during this yield season where people are on the fence, or do you find those kind of conversations end up going straight to financial aid and you're not really a part of them?
Every once in a while, we do have students or families that will reach out to us specifically, especially if I remember I met with a student from New Jersey and her parents had reached out to me directly about their financial situation. And we definitely do the best that we can on our end. But at that point, when it comes to financial aid, it's really a student financial services concern, and they really handle all of those issues and concerns really, really well. And so we tend to advise our families to speak with the Student Financial Services Office, but we, of course, are more than happy to listen in on any of their concerns when it comes to financing college, which, of course, is a big concern of a lot of families.
Definitely. So we talk about May 1st as National Candidate Reply Day, when people need to deposit and submit their agreement. There are always a few people that end up going a little bit past that. So is that your experience as well? Like May 1st, yeah, that's a really important day, but there's still a few decisions that end up lingering maybe into the next week?
Of course. I mean, we hope that, most decisions can be made by May 1st, if not before. But for families who may need extra time or who are awaiting a review of their financial aid application or any kind of appeals that they've made, we definitely, give them time to get that done.
Okay, so now let's just consider that pretty much you've got your class wrapped up, other than, these last loose ends you're tying together. And so talk to us about what happens, let's just say from May 10th or May 7th or whatever into June and July, and then we will have wrapped up the whole cycle.
Sure. So after that, it's really about spring fairs, kind of getting a head start jump on any of those territories that are hosting spring fairs for juniors or rising seniors who are interested in getting their college process started. So a lot of us immediately, almost after our admitted students program, are heading out on the road to do more recruiting, more travel, and to make sure we attend as many of those fairs as possible. So that's the bigger part, I think, of probably May and June. And then we come right back around to July. In June, July, we're sort of winding down regular things in the office. We do still have openings for interviews, for info sessions, and for tours while students, during the summer months. But I think May and June, we're doing kind of that spring travel and winding down the end of the year, going over, any changes we might need to make for next year. And that July and August turns right back into that planning season for us.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Friends, billions of dollars of federal money and institutional money from the colleges themselves is left on the table by students and parents, either by not completing the FAFSA or by students and parents making too many mistakes on the FAFSA. I've read many reports that over 30% of students make mistakes on the FAFSA, and only 61% of students complete the FAFSA. So how do you avoid making a mistake on the FAFSA? The recommended resource for episode 89 is the best resource I know of, and it is a very, very good one. It's the 2020/21 FAFSA full walkthrough video, which is a step-by-step explanation of each and every question you have to answer when you complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. You can access this 25-minute walkthrough video on YouTube by entering FAFSA 2021 walkthrough and selecting the one by Utah Futures. Now, I send this out to all my families and all the students that I work with because it's just that good. And many high school college counselors who work at schools. They pull together a FAFSA expert and they have a special night with Q&A with the expert. But this video is so good that I don't even do that with my families on my caseload. I just send them this video instead. If you're wondering who Utah Futures is, UtahFutures.org is Utah's one-stop shopping for students to make education and career plans online. And if you're thinking, well, I don't live in Utah, great question. But that's irrelevant. The FAFSA is a federal program administered by the Department of Education. Utah Futures, in my opinion, just does an explanation of how to answer every question better than anyone else I know. Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize just, the recruiting kind of never stops. Like, I don't know about you, but I enjoyed going back out on the road in May. There was something about it that, well, first of all, I love travel and I love the recruitment part. Like, I actually, it's a travel season more than reading season. Some people are different. But there was something about that just felt more chill and more relaxed than the fall, where it is just so many visits in such a compressed amount of time. And you feel like deadlines are right on you. Does May travel feel like it's a little slower pace to you than fall travel, or do they all kind of just feel the same to you?
Well, this past May, I did something like 10 fairs in 5 days.
Ooh, so it was nothing relaxed.
it was a pretty intense spring travel season for me. I do think that overall it does feel a little more lax. I think that, students are just getting into this process. And so they really are coming in with probably the most open minds about what they might be looking for in a college, which is great. And so that's, I think, what might offer up that more relaxed feeling during the spring travel, is a little bit more open-mindedness from the students as they start to gauge what it is that they find important in their college search process. And it's not as heavy for the most part, unless you try to tackle those 10 fairs in 5 days. But,
yeah, like Tara. This 5 visits you're coming up in one day in the fall too. Hey, good. It's nice to be young. So for the summer, one thing we used to sort of call that, like you call it, planning season. We all would sort of have projects, divide the office up. Like somebody might look at one of our competitors and look at their visit program or what they're doing on their info sessions or this portion of their website. We kind of divide up and do different things. So you guys do sort of projects divided amongst different people within the office over the summer, more as part of your planning or not?
Yes, I think that everyone has we all have involvement in kind of different parts of the admission process from start to finish. So, we do have an associate director who has a really big hand in helping with publications and kind of our front-facing booklets and our website and things like that. So she works really well with the marketing team and helps bring us that information, and also helps to be informed by whatever information we have. And then, of course, we are, whatever changes we might be making, for example, this year we're moving to community-based evaluations for reading season. And so we have spent some of the summer reaching out to peer institutions that are also doing community-based evaluations, how they've used that process and how they've implemented it into their reading schedules. And so we're always trying to make our admission process better, more convenient for the students, more helpful for everyone, more informative, and really trying to make sure that that entire process benefits the most important people, which of course is the students.
Yeah. And friends, I know some of you may be wondering, what's this community-based evaluation? I don't want to get into that here. I've already got a commitment from somebody to come on and talk about that and do a deep dive into committee and different file reading methods. Because I think, we go down talking about different ways of reading files. We'll be on here forever.
Oh, absolutely.
You'll have your 30th birthday on the phone here with me, Tara. I know it's coming up. So I have to ask this. How do you relax? When do you relax? Because you haven't said anything in here about time off, about vacations. It's just been work. So talk to us about that, like how vacations work and when you can take them, and talk to us about that piece. And and then we'll wind it down.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do, of course, take vacation. Mostly during the summertime is when we get to take some time off. Our vacation days are used how everyone wants to use them. I typically try to give myself long weekends during the summertime, so either a Monday or a Friday. And then I take a kind of try to take a 2-week chunk at the beginning of August, right before we get right back into that serious planning mode in the middle of August. But no, we definitely give ourselves a little more time to breathe. It's of course necessary for us to be able to be as energetic as we are when we do get back on the road, especially as time progresses. So we do take our time for ourselves to kind of get that relaxation in. But I also think in complete honesty that there's, as much as we do need our vacation time and it's wonderful and helpful, we do like being here and we like having something to do. And so we take our time, but we're also happy to come back in and get things started once we're back.
See, that's when you know you're doing what you love, the right job for you. So, Tara, that you're not getting away just because we've known each other for 17 years without being on the hot seat.
Sure.
So we always do our lightning round. So here we go. First question, how do you relax?
Reading, hiking, or just jamming out to some music. So necessary.
And you have been Miss World Traveler. Tell our listeners what you do every year. It is the coolest thing because I normally ask, what's your favorite place you've been? But I know it's probably a hard question for you because you have this thing you do every year, which I think is amazing. Why don't you share it?
Yeah, so I try to take one international vacation every year, even if it's just for a few days. I try to go to a different country just to give myself a little bit of exploration time and a lot of downtime, which it's really nice to get away, be somewhere different, explore a different culture.
So what are some of your favorite places you've been internationally?
I think my top place has definitely been Peru. That was one of the best experiences I've had, for sure. But I also had a wonderful experience when I went to Curacao, which is right next to Aruba. It's a little bit to the east or west. I don't remember, but it's not as well known as Aruba, but it's so phenomenal. It's so wonderful. The people are so incredibly lovely and there's so much to do. And I actually met a really great friend out in Curacao. We just kind of happened to connect at the resort, and now she and her mother and I speak regularly. And she lives in Vienna. So she doesn't speak much English and I don't speak any German, but we managed to communicate and have remained really good friends since then.
No, you know what? You're really, really getting me to get to Peru because, Karis went there for 4.5 months for study abroad when she was a junior at Davidson. Mm-hmm. And she's like, Dad, we got to go to Peru. We've got to go Peru.
And now between really wonderful.
Yeah. So that's got to be on my bucket list. All right. So we all have that food. It's like a guilty pleasure. We know we shouldn't eat it, but we eat it anyway. What's your guilty pleasure when it comes to eating?
Oh, goodness. What isn't my guilty pleasure when it comes to eating? I would have to say cheesecake or coffee flavored ice creams are my favorite thing.
Wow. If you get together with Joy, those are her two favorites. It could be dangerous. My youngest daughter, who you remember as like just a little pint size.
Oh my gosh. Well, both Karis and Joy were little mini things when I last saw them.
Yeah, they were probably like 6 or 8 or something.
Yeah.
Yep. So 23 and 20 now. So.
Oh no.
Yes. So best book or two you've ever read. I say or two because this question was just like impossible for people when I used to say, what's the best book you've ever read?
Oh, wow.
So now I say book or two or even 3. And okay. Our listeners, we get follow-up. People will send emails and say, I bought that book after that person said that on the pod. It was so amazing. So people, you're going to give Amazon some business now.
Okay. So my first book that I always mention is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. My freshman year at Westtown, my roommate, Carly, she actually suggested I read the book, and her family had kind of passed down the book from her siblings. She gave it to me. I've read the book about 5 or 6 times now. My absolute favorites. It is my kind of centering book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, especially if you're going through a transition. I think that students, moving on to college or kind of going into that high school from middle school, I think either way, it's a great book to read when you're making new changes in your life.
Who's the author?
Dan Millman.
Dan Millman. Okay, cool. That's great.
And then The Count of Monte Cristo was my really big book that I read. It took about 3 months to read because it's quite hefty, but it was just, it was so incredible. And the way the story unfolded was amazing. So that's another one of my favorite books that I'm honestly tempted to read again because it was that incredible. And then I think my last book that's one of my favorites would have to be Brida, Brida, by Paulo Coelho. He's one of my favorite authors, and it's just a pretty awesome story about a wonderful woman.
I was feeling pretty well-read in literature and everything, and now I'm I went 0 for 3 on all 3 of your books. Now I'm feeling like an ignoramus over here, but at least you've given me some good books to add to my list as well, which was great. So our last question, your best advice to students listening and your best advice to parents who are listening.
Oh, goodness. Best advice to students listening. Trust the process. Trust yourselves. Trust your gut when it comes to colleges. I guarantee you are going to get into probably more than one wonderful institution. And I guarantee that you will be happy where you end up. And if you're not, transferring is always a possibility, or often a possibility. So don't worry about it. I often try to tell my students, even when I was working at Spence, I try to tell my students to not stress so much over the process. It can be stressful. You don't need to make it more stressful for yourself by thinking that you're not going to do as well as you hope. I promise you will end up at a phenomenal place, no matter where you go. That's for the students. For the parents, I would say trust your students. I think this is the time where students are really starting to get into the driver's seat of their own life, which is a big reason why I love working in higher education, is that I get to speak with students that are starting to advocate for themselves, starting to decide what it is they want to study. And I think that our parents do a great job of supporting their students and should really continue to support them, but also let your students fly and let them reach for any possibility or dream. It's definitely much better to have them go for it, knowing that they have your full support.
Tara, this has been fantastic on a lot of levels. Just the information that you shared, whether we were talking about fairs or interviews or info sessions or what admission officers do, but just even on a friendship level. And I'm so glad that we've kept in touch, over all these years. And it's like a super honor for me that you refer to me as a mentor, because
absolutely, Mark.
Yeah, because I just think your future is so bright, and I know you're just gonna really impact so many lives. So you just keep doing Tara and keep doing your thing there.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Of course, thank you.
Next week, breaking news. The judge has issued a verdict in the Harvard affirmative action case. And we'll be in chapter 90 of 171 answers. And we're letting you know whether colleges where your child applies know where else that your kid is applying to. And it'll be time next week for our special bonus content. And Mark is going to be talking us through the changes in the Common Application. And then Mark kicks off his interview with Mr. Peter Van Buskirk. He's the founder of Best College Fit and former VP of Enrollment at Franklin and Marshall, and understanding how colleges act as businesses in ways that are not in your best interest. Part 1.
And I just have to say, friends, I honestly think that my interview with Peter Van Buskirk will be one of the best interviews that we've ever had. We know from the feedback we're getting, you guys love the Chica interview. Chica. It makes me think that we need to do more student interviews, Anika. Mm-hmm. But I'm getting a sense of what listeners like, and they really like hearing from these admission directors like Greg Roberts at UVA and Dave Wagner that we had recently. And Peter just tells it like it is. So you're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a 4-part series with Peter Van Buskirk. And he's not playing games. He comes out. You think we peel back the onion here and pull back the curtains and talk about college admissions and take you inside. Try a VP of enrollment with 40 years of experience who is not really happy with a lot of things that colleges are doing. And he does not hold back and does not bite his tongue. So that's just a little preview. I had to do my preview on top of your preview on that one, Anika.
It's very intriguing. Thank you. I'm going to listen.
That's why he's in demand all over as a speaker too. So today we're talking about Winthrop University. Now, Anika, one of the things that's been bothering me, we're focusing a lot on getting in, and we're talking about these selective schools now. They want 6 and 7 on IBs, and if you have a 3, and I know that freaks out a lot of people, and it delivers a message that just isn't true. Most schools would love a 3.0 kid who's got 1,100 on an SAT or a 21 on an ACT, and they're going to be a good kid on the dorms. Like, most colleges would love that kid. And I feel sometimes we don't talk about that kid enough, or that school enough. And so I want to highlight one of those schools today, and it's Winthrop University. And so Winthrop has 5,000 undergrads, 1,000 grads, and they're in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is 20 miles from Charlotte, south of Charlotte. So they're right on the South Carolina, North Carolina border. So that's not that far from Unica, a couple hours.
Nope.
And co-ed, beautiful suburban setting, like really, really nice campus, pretty campus for someone who likes a pretty campus. And the Broadcasting Hall of Fame for South Carolina is right on their campus. So mass communications was one of their strengths. Political science is one of their strengths. They had 12 of the presidential candidates come to campus in 2016.
Wow.
So, yeah. So they're strong there. They've got a great career and civic engagement center. Career services is one of their strengths of their school. Diverse school, 57% white, 30% black, 6% Latinx, 4% biracial. 91% in state. So it's heavily South Carolina, and it's about split. Half the students stay on campus, half the students are off campus, and most are women. So 69% women, 31% dudes. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring this school our attention, I had a great meeting with them week before last, is they do a couple really creative things. One of them is if you submit your application before November 1st, it's free. So worry about app fees. Get it in before November 1st. Don't pay any app fee, which I think is pretty cool. But this is something they do that is really creative. So if you have, and every year it's a little bit different. So last year it was like a 3.5 grade point average and a little bit like between an 1,100 and 1,200 on the SAT. And by the way, for you ACT people, that's going to be like a 21, 22, 23 in that range, depending on if they're more 1,200 or 1,100, right? And so what they do, and because they waive out-of-state tuition. So it's out-of-state school, but you don't have to pay out-of-state. You get the in-state rate.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I want people to realize that there are these creative programs out here that can really make college affordable, and you don't need to look at sticker price because it is net price that you should be concerned about. Net price is sticker price minus grants and scholarships. It's what you pay. And so that's really cool. Now, I mentioned that way of getting that out-of-state waiver, but you don't have to have that to go. So if you have a 2.4 GPA and a 900 on an SAT, and a 900 on an SAT is going to be like between an 18 and 19 on an ACT. If you have that, then you're an admissible candidate. They're also Division I, so you get a smaller school environment with small classes, but you still get the big time sports. They've had a 67% acceptance rate. So just what we said, right at that national average, right, Anika?
Mm-hmm.
That's the average. They're taking 2 out of every 3 kids. And a couple of signature programs they have. They have a real strong signature program for students of color that are interested in STEM called their Eagle STEM program. And they bring in a large court over the summer to work directly with professors and do a lot of mentorship because they want to see more students of color go into those fields. And their employers from their career center are telling them that's what they want. Their overall program for all students that's amazing would be what they do when it comes to graphic design, digital information. They've got some really, really cool programs. They've got a program called Digital Information Design, and it combines graphic design, illustration, and computer science. And everybody in that program has to design their own website or design their own app and make their own app as part of that program. They're also very strong in graphic design. And then if you want to be an illustrator, they're one of the top schools out here. So they're really good in the arts. So all 5 programs in the arts actually are all accredited. So we're talking music, theater, art, dance, and design. And they're only one of 20 schools in the country where all 5 of their programs in the arts are all accredited. Now, they're also strong in music technology. Education would be another strong department for them. So they were founded with a history on the arts and a history of education. They've got a really good honors college. And remember how we talked about honors colleges and some of the benefits? So if you have a 3.5 and a 1200, then you can apply for the honors college. And once again, that's going to be around a 24 ACT or ACT people. And it is going to be a separate application you're going to have to submit. But with the honors, you're going to have to do a thesis. So you're going to graduate with the thesis, and they build internships right into their program. You stay with the honor students, you get priority housing, apartment style housing, you get priority registration, so you get all the courses you want. So I just want to kind of bring to our attention, a lot of times students want to be close to a city, and this is close to Charlotte. And a lot of times, I feel we talk a lot about these highly competitive schools. I wanted to introduce one that has some good programs, but it's not super competitive. What do you think, Anika?
I think that was a breath of fresh air. I love hearing about those. That is not like 2% acceptance rate. So glad to hear it. Good
programs,
job.
They've got it. Well, we'll have more of them. I'm trying to strike the balance because I know if I put a survey out there and I say, what colleges do you want to hear? People are going to be like Brown, MIT, you know what I mean? They're going to have all those schools.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to ignore those schools because I meet with those schools. I mean, I met with Brown last week, this is what I do, but I'm also meeting with these other schools. And I don't know, I think I'm trying to get the right balance, and I don't know if we're doing it right, but we're trying.
That's right. That's all you can do.
Actually, you know what else, listeners, before we leave, I want feedback. So we've gotten a lot of people in the surveys that have said they really like our student interviews. And I really feel, Anika, that we should do a few more of these based on the feedback. And I realized that every one of the student interviews we've done so far has been with a girl. Because we had Lauren Stenson on, we had Ann Jean on, and we had Chika Nwosu on. And so I definitely want to set one up with a boy. And what I would like feedback on, would our listeners want a high achieving boy, a kind of average middle of the road, or like a challenge, struggling, trying to make it, keep your head above water? What kind of interview would be more appealing? So if anybody has any thoughts on that, shoot us an email at questions@yourcollegebounkid.com.
Well, let me give you my thoughts. Let's just do all of them. How about that? Just get your 3 going, Mark.
That probably makes a lot of sense, right?
Mm-hmm. It does. I promise.
Well, I mean, I can't promise that all in 2020 because I know our 2020 lineup. I know this is crazy. Our listeners don't know this, but we've almost booked all of our interviews for 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that's good about it is we get so many emails. Nika, 3 today came in where people trying to get on the podcast.
Aww.
It's so funny. They always start out, hi, Mark and Anika. I really enjoy your podcast. And then I know where they're going. By the way, and a lot of them are like from like people that hire publicity firms to go out and find podcasts for them to get on. And so I have a nice built-in excuse. I can say, we've lined up almost all of our, I don't know. But sometimes, like today I said, and we already have a lot of people that have expertise in the area of your guests. So thanks a lot, but I will respectfully decline.
Unless you're Michelle Obama's representative. And
we'll make an exception over there. We'll just cut right in and say, sorry, Peter. Like you, Peter, but we're going to bump you a few weeks.
Come on in, Michelle. Come on.
Because we had Lauren. All right, Anika. You hung pretty well. This is the 11:20 and you're on a podcast. That's way past your bedtime.
I'm asleep. Don't worry about it.
So listen, when can we record again? Because Sunday's not good for you anymore.
I know. We'll talk about it.
Okay, grab something on my calendar because it's filling up.
I know. It's that time. It's that time of year.
It's that time of year. You know what? At some point, I should probably interview your kids, Anika. That would be really cool. Janaea and Jalen.
I don't know.
What does I don't know mean? You don't want them on here? Or they wouldn't want to be on here.
No, they would love it, actually. Yeah, let's do it. I
think that would be cool. I think that'd be a fun interview.
John, too.
All right.
Let John plug in.
Yeah. Let's get John in there. I can say, John, what have you learned from having 2 older sibs and a mom that's podcasting all the time?
John's a comedian now. Get ready.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. That's where you get it from.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
All right. Talk to you later. I'm trying to get on the podcast.
Aww.
It's so funny. They always start out, hi, Mark and Anika. I really enjoy your podcast. And then I know where they're going. By the way, and a lot of them are like from like people that hire publicity firms to go out and find podcasts for them to get on. And so I have a nice built-in excuse. I can say, we've lined up almost all of our, but sometimes like today I said, and we already have a lot of people that have expertise in the area of your guest. So thanks a lot, but I will respectfully decline.
Unless you're Michelle Obama's representative. And
we'll make an exception over there. We'll just cut right in and say, sorry, Peter. Like you, Peter, but we're going to bump you a few weeks.
Come on in, Michelle. Come on.
All right, Anika. You hung pretty well. This is the 11:20 and you're on a podcast. That's way past your bedtime.
I'm asleep. Don't worry about it.
So listen, when can we record again? Because Sunday's not good for you anymore.
I know. We'll talk about it.
Okay, grab something on my calendar because it's filling up.
I know. It's that time. It's that time of year.
It's that time of year. You know what? At some point, I should probably interview your kids, Anika. That would be really cool. Janaea and Jalen.
I don't know.
What does I don't know mean? You don't want them on here, or they wouldn't want to be on here?
No, they would love it, actually. Yeah, let's do it. I
think that would be cool. I think that'd be a fun interview.
John, too.
All right.
Let John plug in.
Yeah. Let's get John in there. I can say, John, what have you learned from having two older sibs and a mom that's podcasting all the time?
John's a comedian now. Get ready.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. That's where you get it from.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
All right. Talk to you later.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.